Let's get some quick reaction and analysis on what we've just heard. Steve Leisman is back with us alongside Kayla Tausche from Washington, Rick Santelli watching bonds and the dollar out in Chicago, and Peter Bookvar, who is CIO of Bleakley Advisory Group and a CNBC contributor. Let's go down the line here, Steve. I'll start with you. Thoughts?
The first thing I heard, and I guess I heard it 3 times, was there is now the political, I guess the word is imprimatur to battle inflation. President Biden says we need to battle inflation. Powell said we need to battle inflation, and Brainard said it as well. You know, you'd like to think of the Fed as being apolitical. That's not really true. The Fed does not exist in a political vacuum. The body politic now wants to see inflation brought down, and so nobody can complain when the Fed does what it's going to have to do, hopefully not too much, in the coming months to battle inflation.
Kayla, what did you hear that stood out, and what are the main issues that swirl as we wait for them? They do both still have to be confirmed.
Well, notably, Kelly, you heard the president talk about stability at the Federal Reserve and the idea that he wants it to be somewhat immune from politics. But there were some politics at play behind the scenes in this decision. I'm told that earlier this fall, when Randy Quarles announced that he was going to be departing the Board of Governors, that essentially armed the president with the ability to make the argument to the Democratic Party that even if he left Chair Powell in place and renominated him for a second term, that he could make the argument that he would be able to pick his own choices for the majority of the Board of Governors. That, along with the fact that Powell was originally nominated by President Obama, was enough essentially to sell them on that. I'm told that there was also a question, while Brainard has enough support possibly to have gotten a full Senate vote to confirm her, that there were questions about the initial hurdle of the Senate Banking Committee, which has a 50-50 makeup, and one Democrat had vocally supported Powell. There were questions about whether that would have been an initial hurdle that would have been too high to surpass, and that essentially by giving her this vice chair role, it is the number 2 role, it is incredibly powerful, and that they could essentially present a twofer that gave an olive branch to both sides of the aisle.
Very interesting. And I know you say as well to kind of watch for this as maybe setting her up for future positions of influence at the Treasury and or, obviously the Fed chair itself. Peter, does any of this make you itch a little bit about inflation, what Kayla was just describing behind the scenes?
Well, it's certainly here inflation. It's just a question of how does the Federal Reserve confront it. And right now, the strategy is, of course, to taper first, and then only after the taper is done do they want to raise interest rates. But throughout this taper, they're still buying assets. They're still increasing the size of their balance sheet. So that's not really a serious attempt to deal with inflation. Now, when they eventually get to raising interest rates, well, how aggressive are they going to be? Because they have markets that have very high valuations, credit spreads that are extraordinarily tight. How do markets respond to the Fed's attempt to control inflation? What happens if we reach a point where markets sell off, but inflation is still high? Will the Fed focus on inflation, or will they try to help markets? So there's a very difficult situation that they have ahead of them. And I'm glad there is some continuity, but these are also the same people that voted for the policies that got us to this point as well.
Rick, what are your reactions?
I don't think that there's a huge difference in monetary policy strategy between Lael Brainard and Jay Powell. There are other issues they differ on. So I do think that continuity is a big deal. But I think how I looked at this from the inflation standpoint is it was inflation that most likely led the president to this choice. Not making a lane change, not doing anything different at this point when it is such an important issue, and we've just changed how we deal with inflation. The policies pre-COVID were altered with respect to kind of a average range versus a 2% trigger. I think the president had a good day today. I think he did the right thing. I think the markets demonstrate that. And I think as you look at twos, which are now, basically at the high yields of the day, 0.58, 0.59. You look at 10s trading 1.62, the high yield, low price today. Or you look at the dollar index making fresh 16-month high close today. I think the markets are now continuing what they started before we all got sidetracked with who will be the next February pick, because there's work to be done and the markets want it done quicker.
There's the dollar index around 96.5, so edging higher there as well. A big thank you to all of you today for standing by for your reaction here. Steve Leisman, Kayla Tausche, Rick Santelli, and Peter Bookvar.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.